Imagine an internet built not on bits and bytes, the normal stuff, but on the truly bizarre rules of quantum mechanics. We're talking about a network that could offer totally unbreakable security and a way to move information around that feels like it's been pulled straight out of science fiction. Today, we're going to dig into how this quantum internet is going from being a wild idea to a planet-spanning reality.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get into the fundamental promise of quantum communication. What makes it so special? Then, we'll look at how you even begin to design and build something this complex. From there, we'll talk about the race to go global using satellites, then dive into the high-stakes geopolitics of it all. And finally, we'll sketch out what this future internet might actually look like.
So, first up, the quantum promise. Let's get right to the core of what makes this whole thing so revolutionary. And really, it all boils down to two incredible, mind-bending ideas. Absolutely perfect security and a completely new way of sending information.
Look, for as long as we've had secrets, we've had people trying to steal them. In our digital world, it's just this constant arms race, right? Code makers versus code breakers. But what if you could create a secret where the very act of someone trying to spy on it would just destroy it and immediately tell you that someone was listening in?
Well, that's the magic behind something called quantum key distribution, or QKD. It literally uses the laws of physics, specifically a rule called the no-cloning theorem, to create a shared secret key. Because you can't measure a quantum particle without changing it, any attempt to eavesdrop is instantly detected. This isn't just better encryption, it's what's called information theoretic security. It's a lock that's secure against any computer now or any supercomputer in the future.
So, unbreakable security, that's a massive leap forward on its own. But the quantum promise goes even deeper than that. It goes to a place that honestly sounds like science fiction, and it challenges our basic idea of what it means to send something from point A to point B.
And that brings us to quantum teleportation. Now, no, we're not beaming people around Star Trek style. But what we are doing is transferring the complete information of a quantum state from one particle to another, instantly, over a distance. It's a disembodied transfer of information. But, and this is a key point, it is not faster than light. To finish the process and actually reconstruct the state on the other side, you still have to send some regular, classical information, and that's still limited by the good old speed of light.
So how do we know this is the real deal and not just some clever trick? Well, this number right here is the proof. See, if you were limited to classical physics, the absolute best you could ever do at recreating a quantum state is with about 67% accuracy, a fidelity of 2/3. So to prove you've actually achieved genuine quantum teleportation, your experiment has to beat that limit. It's not just a number, it's the bright red line that separates actual science fact from pure science fiction.
All right, section 2, building the blueprint. So we've got these incredible concepts, but a global quantum internet? It's one of the most complex systems humanity has ever tried to dream up. You can't just grab a wrench and start building it. You have to design it, test it, and break it in the virtual world first. You have to simulate it.
And when you're designing these simulators, you run into this classic engineering trade-off. Do you need a perfectly accurate model of the physics, like down to how every single qubit falls apart over time? If so, you'd use something like NetSquid. The catch? It's going to be slow. Or do you need to model a massive network with thousands of nodes to test things like routing protocols? Then you'd use SimQN, which is way faster because it simplifies or abstracts some of those nitty-gritty physics details.
And that same trade-off pops up when you're modeling noise, which is the absolute arch-nemesis of any quantum system. You can go with a method called Krauss operators, which is this mathematically perfect, deterministic description of how noise messes with the quantum state. It's incredibly precise, but it's a ton of work for the computer. Or you can use Monte Carlo methods. These are probabilistic. They just run thousands of random simulations to get a statistical, good enough picture. It's much, much faster, especially for modeling gigantic networks.
Okay, part 3, reaching for the stars. So we've got a blueprint, we can start building, but there is a huge problem. Quantum signals are unbelievably fragile. You can't amplify them like you can with a regular internet signal. If you send one down an optical fiber, it basically fizzles out after a couple hundred kilometers. So what's the solution? Well, you bypass the fiber altogether and you go to space.
The Maiaceus satellite, launched by China back in 2016, was an absolute game changer. It wasn't just one experiment, it was this rapid-fire series of world firsts. First, it achieved quantum teleportation from a ground station up to the satellite over 1,400 kilometers. Then, it set up the first ever intercontinental quantum-secured video call. It single-handedly proved that a global quantum network wasn't just possible, it was pretty much inevitable.
And that number, 7,600 kilometers, it just perfectly illustrates the power of using satellites. By going through the vacuum of space, it completely leapfrogged the distance limits of fiber optics on the ground, connecting entire continents with a single, secure quantum link. Just amazing.
But how you use the satellite leads to another big strategic choice. Do you put a simple quantum source on the satellite and game particles down to Earth? That's the downlink model, and it's what Micius used. It's proven to work, but you're limited by the satellite's power supply. The other option is the uplink model. You generate really powerful quantum signals on the ground and shoot them up to a much more complex detector in space. It's way harder to build, but it's the path that could unlock the super high entanglement rates you'd need for a true high-performance quantum internet.
All right, Section 4, the global race. The technology is now proven, the potential is there, and so, of course, the race is on. And let's be clear, this is not just some friendly scientific competition anymore. This is about geopolitics, it's about economics, and it's about who gets to control the fundamental communication infrastructure of the 21st century.
And the stakes are absolutely enormous. The market for quantum communication is projected to explode to over $13 billion in just the next decade. And that staggering growth isn't being driven by you or me wanting a new phone. It's a frantic rush by governments and massive industries who finally realize that our entire modern encryption system is living on borrowed time. Quantum security isn't a research project anymore. It's a strategic necessity.
So what this means is the global race is developing with this really fascinating strategic imbalance. Right now, the United States is leading the pack in building powerful quantum computers, the very machines that could one day break every code we rely on. At the same time, China has jumped out to a commanding lead in deploying quantum networks, the technology that provides unbreakable encryption. This creates this incredible global sword and shield dynamic. One side is building the ultimate weapon, and the other side is building the ultimate defense.
And that asymmetry leads to totally different national strategies. China is laser-focused on deploying networks and becoming the country that sets the global standard for secure communication. The US, on the other hand, is focused on keeping its lead in computing while also controlling the critical hardware supply chains you need to build these things. And then you have the European Union, which is kind of playing a different game altogether. They're trying to build their own sovereign infrastructure to avoid becoming dependent on either of the other two for this critical technology.
And that brings us to our final section, the future internet. We know the principles, we see the global race heating up. But what are the last few technical pieces we need to actually build a full-blown teleportation internet that connects the entire planet?
Well, the proposed architecture looks a lot like the internet we use today. It's going to have layers. At the very bottom, you have the physical layer, the actual hardware, the quantum memories, the sources creating entanglement. The middle layer is all about delivering that entanglement over long distances using devices called quantum repeaters. And then right at the top, you have the application layer, the part that actually uses all that entanglement to provide on-demand teleportation services.
But getting there means we have to solve some pretty major engineering challenges. We need better quantum transducers that can translate between different kinds of quantum hardware. We need to make our core measurements deterministic, which is a fancy way of saying they need to work 100% of the time, not just sometimes. We need much better quantum memories. And, this is a big one, we need a super fast classical network working behind the scenes just to coordinate the whole quantum shebang.
And so we end right where the technology and the geopolitics collide. The quantum internet is no longer a question of if, it's a question of when. And as this incredible global network comes online, promising a whole new era of communication, the most pressing question might not be a technical one at all. It's about who gets to write the rules for this new frontier and what that will mean for the future of information itself.